Welcome to inTUNE, Stories of Connection Through Music. This is the podcast where we explore stories from educators, artists, and community leaders who are using music to break down barriers and build community. We'll look at how inclusion shows up in private studios, classrooms, in community programs, and even inside correctional facilities. And I'll share a few stories and strategies that might just shift the way you think about teaching and connection through music. Whether you're a teacher, a musician, a parent, or someone who simply believes in the power of music to bring people together, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Martiros, a music educator, consultant, and the founder of Opportunity, an organization that uses music to connect people across backgrounds, bridge divides, and open doors. And by the way, all of the music you'll hear in today's episode was written or produced by Opportunity students in our programs. Today I'm joined by someone whose leadership has shaped the landscape of correctional programming in Worcester County, Sheriff Lou Evangelidis. We'll talk about his personal relationship with music, his views on rehabilitation and meaningful reentry, and the role programs like Opportunity have played inside the Worcester County House of Corrections. Sheriff Evangelidis, welcome to inTUNE. So Lou, the first question I have for you is, what role did music play in your early life?
I've always been drawn to music. I can't say exactly why. I mean, my father especially as I got older in life, I realized how much he loved music. But he always did listen to music in the car, and the radio, at home. I grew up in Worcester in a three-decker, a lot of music around me, moved to Holden next to my grandparents. They loved certain types of music. So I was exposed to a lot of music growing up. I loved it, like all of us, I suppose. What drew you to your passion? You don't even know, you just do. It's like instinctual. I've just always had a passion, a love for music, to the point where I became an adult, I realized it's definitely far in excess of the average person. So, in middle school, I remember I would memorize the top 40 songs, and I was considered the jukebox. You could name a song and I'd sing it. That was unusual, I suppose, in hindsight. Remember when I was in college, I took music classes at UMass Amherst. They had a pretty well-renowned jazz program. I always loved folk music. I grew up with rock and roll. It was probably the primary era of rock and roll was like the 60s and 70s. And then as I got older, I went to live in New York City, and I got really into classical music and used to go in New York to see classical music and found that really inspirational. And then as I got older, I remember in the late 80s, I lived in Philadelphia. I went to law school in Philadelphia, and that's when heavy rap first came out. So I started listening to a lot of NWA and Public Enemy, and very inspirational in the sense of what they were trying to say. And then I morphed into heavy doses of country music as it kind of got very popular. And then you start having kids, and I had girls, so I got exposed to a lot of girl pop music, which I wouldn't have been drawn to normally, but I did, and I found it to be great. You never know what's coming. I try to keep my mind open. I'm very drawn to melancholy music, which I'm grateful to say I haven't lived a melancholy life, but I'm very attracted to melancholy people because I think they live the pain that I don't want to live, but I find it very real in music. So, for example, Hank Williams or Lucinda Williams, their gut-wrenching, heartfelt songs are very sad, but they're beautiful. And I'm really drawn to that type of music as well. So I could go all day.
Yeah, no, those were awesome responses. There's a lot of depth there. The last time I was in your office, your walls are sort of covered in photos of you with famous people. And I just wondered if you could tell us some stories about them, especially those who are musicians.
Nobody's ever asked me this question, and I'm excited to answer it. I made a decision because I'm an elected official. I don't want to have it filled with politicians. I'm not even enamored with politicians, to be honest. I just don't find them as inspirational as I do certain athletes and musicians. So I'll just say a couple of quick stories. So B.B. King, I would say, if you had to ask me who's the most important figure on your wall, I would say B.B. King, because there's very few artists, and for me, there were triple threats, and there are so few who write their own music, extraordinary music, play an instrument at a super high level, and they're amazing singers. There just aren't many. But when you find somebody who's a triple threat, that's a rarity in this world. And I think B.B. King is my favorite example of that. I mean, he wrote so many of the great blues standards of all time. He was an incredibly emotional singer, but most importantly, he had a way of expressing through the guitar his feelings that no one had ever heard before him. The greatest honor I ever had was to meet him and to get a photo with him. Number two would be Dickie Betts of the Allman Brothers. He had the most spiritual guitar playing I ever heard. I saw Dickie Betts over 35 times in person, and no one ever spiritually touched me like he did. He had the ability to take soaring guitar solos. The guitar solo in Blue Sky, if you're not familiar with it, it's beyond spiritual. The last one I'll just point to, Emmylou Harris. She was a very famous country star, and I got to meet her in a very funny situation that was actually tied to being sheriff. It was a dog adoption program up here, and we adopted dogs and we trained them to work for the department because we didn't have any service dogs when I got here because we couldn't afford them. They aged out. So I said, we got to keep having like a narcotics detection dog up here and a bloodhound to help find missing people. So we found an affordable way to do it was to adopt a dog from a local shelter, train it, and then have him available to be one of the most sophisticated drug sniffing dogs, narcotics detection in the country. But what made it special was he was adopted, We put the story out and it caught fire. A company in Hollywood picked up, they do a show called Shelter Me every year about shelter animals who serve the community in super positive ways. And they decided to highlight our dog, Nikita. So they wanted us to go to Hollywood with Nikita and basically walk the red carpet on the premiere of this show. So we did, and the only other dogs that they highlighted on that show, it was Emmylou Harris's shelter in Nashville, Tennessee. So I got to meet her, and it was a really special time for me, and that sits in my office as well. So who would think a sheriff and shelter dogs could lead you to meet, a country icon in Hollywood, California?
Those are great stories. I have a couple of questions specifically related to your career path as a sheriff, and then everything will kind of tie into opportunity. So the first one is, how many years have you served as sheriff in Worcester County?
I've never had a job in my life before this one that lasted more than 10 years. In my 20s, I traveled. I lived in 5 states. I went to undergraduate school, law school, and, served as an assistant DA and a state attorney and traveled. But in my 30s, I was an attorney and I got married and I had kids. And then in my 40s, I transitioned into being elected state representative and did that for 8 years. And then when I was 50, I got elected sheriff. So I never thought I'd do this job this long. But after my second term ended, after 12 years, I was just thinking about whether I'd run again. And, my daughter said, well, why wouldn't you? You got the best job in public service. It's a big enough job you can change people's lives, but it's a small enough job you can know the lives of the people you change. So the answer to your question is I'm in my 15th year, never had a job more than 10, and I love every minute of it. So, at least most of the time. I guess we all have tough days, but for the most part, it's a really amazing job to help rehabilitate people's lives in the jail and help keep people out of prison through our reentry centers and then serve the community. So that's a long way to say 15 years.
Thanks to your daughter. And then tell me about the process of becoming sheriff. What was that path like for you?
I never dreamed about being sheriff. I was working on Wall Street, actually, not a highfalutin making a ton of money guy, but I was a runner down on the commodities exchange in New York City. So after a year of that, I thought, I think I'm going to go to law school. And I was more of a liberal back then at my time. I wanted to save the world. And I didn't care about making money. Money's has never been a real goal of mine. I want to be comfortable, of course. I want to provide, but I don't care about being rich. That didn't interest me. I don't care what car I drive. I find people, who've kind of lived on the edge kind of very interesting. And because when I left, the people said, why are you leaving? You'll be making $1 million a year in 3 years in that job, because I was very good at it. I worked on the floor of the commodities exchange in New York City. If you've ever seen the movie Trading Places, I would be one of the runners. People were making a lot of money. But I didn't trust myself in that environment. I'm like, this isn't for me. I want to go to law school. I want to do something special with my life. So I left. I went to law school. And after that, I just decided I was always drawn to criminal law. So the top prosecuting office in the country was run by Janet Reno, she ran a phenomenal office in Dade County, Florida. She recruited at my law school, Temple University. So I lived in North Philadelphia for 3 years. And I suppose during that time, it maybe leads a lot to what I do now, because we had a program called LEAP, Law Education Assisted Program. and we would go into the local high schools. It was a pretty tough neighborhood. We took an opportunity, as ironically, as a law school, to go into the community and public service. So we would go into high schools and teach constitutional law to high school kids, and I wanted to be part of that program. And I taught constitutional law to an inner city school, and I never enjoyed anything in my life more than that particular year. It was so moving. And I remember when I left, the kids gave me a card, and one of the students wrote, "I don't like school, but every day I knew you were coming. I looked forward to coming to school." And I remember thinking, wow, like that really hit me hard. Like I never felt that kind of joy from work before. So I always remembered that. I ended up becoming a state prosecutor in Dade County, Florida, moved to Miami. Tough crime era in 1987, 88, let me tell you. So I learned a lot about criminal prosecution, and this is where I guess it kind of starts to come into focus. I was thinking I wanted to do something different, and I thought I might want to become a high school teacher. So I passed the exam, but at the same time I moved home to Holden, Massachusetts, and it turned out they redistricted, and I was always interested in politics and that kind of public service, so as luck would have it, they redistricted then, and I saw an opportunity. And as somebody who was a Democrat in my 20s, an independent in my 30s, now I'm 40s, and I'm so sick of the one-party state and nobody listened to the voters. So I basically ran for state representative, and if I lost that election, I probably would have gone and become a high school teacher. But as luck would have it, I won that election pretty overwhelmingly. I served for 8 years in the legislature. And then I got a little tired of Beacon Hill, and I thought I'd like to do something different. I thought, sheriff is something I could consider, and I was asked to consider it. So I ended up running for sheriff, and I promised I was going to do it different. I was drawn to what the sheriff's office could be, not what it had been, and I felt it could be a place where people's lives were rehabilitated. I owed nobody any favors. I promised nobody a job, which was unheard of. And shockingly, I was the first Republican elected sheriff in Worcester County in anyone's memory, and I'm going back 50 years plus. So I wasn't part of the political establishment. I didn't know anybody anything. I didn't know anybody here at the jail. So when I came in, I was able to basically kick ass and run it right. I was able to hold people accountable because I didn't know anybody anything. And that sent shockwaves through the place, and it was hard, and there was a lot of resistance, and we had an unbelievable amount of people suing us and arbitrations, and it was really difficult. And I'll give you just one quick example. You're thinking, okay, like what? Well, somebody didn't show up to work for 5 days without a sick note, so we suspended them. And they appealed it. And we lost the appeal because no one had ever had to give a sick note before. They called it past practices. So that's the nonsense that this place was built around. And when we came in, we did it different. And that's what drove me to become sheriff. I thought we could make this place something different, something special. I thought with my background on education and these kind of things, I would focus on rehabilitating inmates. We raised the hiring standards, so you had to have a college education or served your country to get hired. No more political hires. After my first 6-year term, which is unusual, I started to feel this place was turning around, and I was really dedicated to finishing that part of the transition. And then after 12 years, then I thought about how special this job is and how our work's never done here. I hope that gives you a sense of how I came to become sheriff and how I approached it.
Yeah, and your priorities at that time. So since becoming sheriff 15 years ago, has your philosophy about incarceration evolved or changed?
Yes, on some level, but I guess what I'd say is I always came in with the idea of not throwing the key away, because that doesn't work. I'm tough on crime, and as I mentioned, I'm a former prosecutor. There are people that belong in prison. Victims have been forgotten about in the criminal justice system, and I will never forget them. But I also know what's effective, and my job here isn't to judge people because they've been judged. My job is to help those who want to help themselves, and I would only say it's a reaffirmation of what I thought when I got here has been the case. And if I had to say the most surprising thing about what it is to be sheriff, how many times people come up to me on the streets of Worcester or any town, almost routinely people come up to me and they say, "Do you remember me, Sheriff? I was in your opportunity program. I was in your STOP program. You were there for my graduation." But what they say next is incredible, and I can see in their eyes that they're doing good because they don't come up to me to lie to me. I mean, if you're not doing well, you just avoid me. But overwhelmingly, they come to me, and what they tell me is, "Sheriff, I can't tell you how going to your prison ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me." A lot of progressive social justice people, they don't think prisons work. But you know what? If they're done right, they can change people's lives for the better. And sometimes people need that pause and time in their life to regroup. And I'm really proud of that.
What do you think the public most misunderstands about jails, incarceration, or the individuals who are incarcerated?
Not only do 82% of people come in here have substance issues, but almost all of them have a co-occurring mental health disorder. We have an outside company that advocates, that handles our mental health, and we've invested heavily in that. We've quadrupled the budget since I've been here. And we do it for the community at large, because if people get out of here and we've got a handle on their mental health and their substance problems, and we provide them things like opportunity for their spiritual growth, and then we give them potential job skills. All this feeds towards them getting out, living a better life, not recidivating, not recommitting crimes. And at the end of the day, Melissa, what I love about this job is I say to everyone who comes to work here, how many of us work in a job where we all win? Most of the world is there's winners and there's losers. But in this world, if the inmate wins, we all win. Because they're living a better life, their family's having a better life, the community is safer, we all win. A lot of people have this perception of prison and incarceration, and they watch movies and they see things. I can assure you and your listening audience that we are professionals. Everyone who comes to our facility, we treat them with dignity and respect until they prove to us otherwise. They have an enormous support system here if they want to take advantage of it. And we have a national organization that audits us every 3 years. And they say we go around the United States of America and we've seen very few facilities that have this type of employee atmosphere. People love their jobs here. The inmates feel safe. They actually highlight our jail as a national model. And I wouldn't know that because I don't go and audit other jails. I just know what we do.
Yeah, it makes me think about when we started in 2019, how none of us really knew what we were getting into when we came in to teach our first classes in the jail. But I remember reading a response somebody had on social media to an article the Telegram had run about the program that we were doing at that time, criticizing offering music programs to what he called the clowns in the facility. I was really kind of pissed off. And then I got to thinking, what we're trying to do here is create an opportunity for these guys to learn a different way of expressing themselves, which can only help all of us when they're released, right? So yeah, we're offering them programming to help them rehabilitate and give them something inside that keeps them on the right path, but also we're trying to do something that helps the greater community when they're on the back end, right? It was just like sort of divine intervention in some ways that opportunity landed in Worcester because we align so well with what you're trying to accomplish. Related to that, what changes have you seen in individuals who participate in creative or educational programming? And why do you believe music specifically has been so impactful?
Well, let me just start with opportunity because, I'm glad you feel that way because we do. As we try to find a place to reach all the inmates that come through here. So some people are not open to anything. They're tougher than anybody and they're not going to show any weakness and open themselves up here. So they don't want any help. They're all set. There's nothing we can do for those people except wish them well when they leave and probably see them when they come back. But we're always there to find out who's ready to change, who's realized they don't want to come back here anymore. Some people, it's the first day they're here. Some people, it's the 10th time they're here and they still don't get it. But the point is, you never know and you have to be ready to reach those people. So we try to provide as many avenues to reach people as possible. And if it's substance treatment they need, we'll offer them substance treatment. If it's mental health services, we'll offer those. If it's job skills, for example, we have a culinary program with Quinsigamond Community College. We partner with Clark University on business development programming. We partner with Worcester State with financial literacy. So we're trying to find as many partners and programs that we can offer to help people. Now, a lot of people might say, hey, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I don't get this opportunity. I don't get to have these programs. Well, that is true, and that's not really fair. But my job is to try to help keep you safe. And the way to do it is to try to change people while they're incarcerated. So when they get out, they don't ever want to come back. So we all win. So that's a different argument. Me, it's simply, I'm going to try to do whatever I can to reduce recidivism, to keep my community safe. And opportunity came along is another piece of that puzzle. And we saw it as a very therapeutic program. So many people are drawn to music, and the population we have is as drawn to music or more so than the average population. And you expressed to me what you envisioned the opportunity program and what you created it for. And I know you do a lot of great things in the community, in the schools, trying to expose people to music and get them on a great path. A lot of people come into this program, even our teachers, for example, and as much as they give, which they give a lot, they get a lot too. That it's a two-way street. So I felt the opportunity was just a perfect additional programming to what we do here in a way that it teaches people camaraderie. It shows the families something special, a different side of people, because we open this program up to families to come for the final concert, and we don't do that for only 2 programs that we've ever allowed direct contact visits. What Opportunity has done is provided us another tool for us to help rehabilitate people, and a very therapeutic tool.
I'm grateful for today. Learning how to be a friend. What's on my heart, my family. I got a good book and a warm bed. Well, I'm grateful for the pain. Joy is getting so much sweeter. Every breath I take, every step of the way is a gift that's just for me.
From your perspective, what makes the opportunity approach unique?
It's a music program, so it gives people a chance to express themselves in ways that they maybe tapped into that they never knew before. And when you go to the concerts and we put the lyrics on, and being a big Bob Dylan fan, I'm very much into lyrics. I think lyrics are as important as the music itself many times.
Well, I done seen some things, and boy, I've felt some pain. Rain done poured down in my life from 40 days and 40 nights, through the highs and lows. I know to stay strong with hope that's in my soul. I keep moving on, I keep moving on.
You remember when we had Vijay Gupta worked with your program for a while, right? And Vijay, who was a world-renowned violinist, came in here, worked with the Opportunity program, probably the most special thing that ever happened with any of our programming. And he also taught, inside the facility as a world-renowned violinist. And I remember the first time I saw him, he was playing Bach for the inmates and talking about how they felt about the music. And they talked about how it was so sad and melancholy. And he explained that Bach had lived a very tough life, including being incarcerated. So there are many things that Opportunity has done that I can see help people express their feelings, help them rehabilitate themselves, give them joy. And at the end of the day, like I said, we do not coddle people. This is a jail. This is not a place to have fun, but it's a place to rehabilitate yourself. And if Opportunity can help us do that in a way that gives people some joy, I'm happy to be partnering with that.
I know we've heard from folks, correctional officers in particular, that after participating in the class, the whole energy on the block is a little bit different when the guys return because they're just a little bit lighter and maybe a little bit happier, I guess. That might be too strong of a word, but their whole energy is different and it just has an impact on the general living situation down on the block. Or, we've had past participants tell us that the Opportunity program kept them on the right path, or it kept them from getting in fights, or kept them from doing anything that would prevent them from losing the opportunity to be a part of the class. And so I would just like to hear directly from you how you think that it has sort of had an impact on the culture of the jail at large.
Well, I think you kind of nailed it as far as the ultimate impact with the actual inmate population is that they form a real camaraderie in the class. You can see it, you can feel it. I think that transitions back to when they go back to the blocks. They try to sell the program to other people inside the facility, so I think it has a very good buzz about it. The inmate benefit is very real, and it does last beyond the actual instruction in the class itself. Also, I think it's important, and you can see this every time we have a concert, in a graduation is that the staff buys in. And let me be clear, when you run a correctional facility, I think the word skepticism is a pretty fair comment. We live in a tough environment, tough world. A lot of people have been repeat offenders. A lot of people have caused great harm to people. There's a lot of gangs and tough environment. Jails are not fun places. That's why you got to hire special people who can not go dark on you, but can stay positive and stay engaged. But what I found with this program, it was pretty easy to see how quickly the staff bought into it. They're not going to bust to get people to programs that they don't believe in. And when I first got here, nobody bothered to bring anybody to any programming because it was all a joke. Nobody respected anybody. So it was a bunch of silos that didn't respect each other. So my big job coming in was, how do I rebuild these silos one at a time? But what I've noticed now, an opportunity, a perfect example, is the buy-in is real. The officers want to get the people to the program. The staff, as you see, some of them aren't even involved with Opportunity, whether they're educators or substance counselors or social workers. They come to all of the concerts. And the room is packed. So I find that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, you know what? You've done a really good job of that from my perspective, for what that's worth. When we come into the jail, it feels like a real community, and the staff are all fantastic. It's kind of like seeing family again when we reconnect with them. And, the education team is just awesome. Part of the reason why we as an Opportunity team really enjoy coming there is because the staff is so great to work with. So you've certainly done a good job.
I'm really proud of what you just said, because I think the staff here, people should realize who don't come in here, these are extraordinary people and work in a very difficult environment. And the fact that they're open to programs like Opportunity shows you the type of staff we have.
Have there been any moments where you thought this is why this matters?
Every concert I've been to, there's always that one moment that it hits you, and you don't know where it's going to come. You don't know who's going to do it, but it happens. All of the participants in the program, they're all bonded together. They support each other. You can see the joy they have and their willingness to get up and sing and, put themselves out there. I mean, it's not easy.
Completely agree. As I was listening to you earlier on in the conversation, you were talking about working in Miami, and it was sort of like the ground zero for crime in the 80s, and your work as a prosecutor and then as a sheriff for 15 years. I think you've probably seen, the worst of the worst in some ways. And then your knowledge about law and about rehabilitation, it's about as vast as your knowledge about music, but you're not a trained musician. You've talked about music being spiritual, and I'm sure you've derived great pleasure from your passion for music. I just wonder if the music is a way of just kind of balancing things out for you, right? So one of the main drives I have as a leader of Opportunity and as a musician is to create opportunities for people who have lived really hard lives or experienced hard things, either young kids in our youth programs or inmates who are serving time. There's no way any of them lived easy lives and ended up there, right? But to give them music as an opportunity to sort of experience something beautiful or expressive, or give them a lifeline in times where it's really, really hard. And I just think there might be a parallel there for you in terms of our mission, and also what I view music as. You leave work during the day having experienced sort of a whole range, I assume, of challenges and difficulties. And then you go home and you have this immense passion for music. And I just wonder to what extent you view it as sort of balancing out your life.
My first thought is a buddy of mine just gave me a book, a really fascinating book if you're a Beatles fan, called John and Paul, a love story, which was very interesting, extraordinarily insightful if you're a Beatles fan. But in the inside, he wrote a famous Greek proverb that without music, there is nothing. And that's kind of my feelings about things. It's how I live my life. Every time I get in my car, the music continues unless I'm on the phone. Music is playing. And when I get home, the first thing I do is flip it on. So I can't imagine life without music around me every moment that I have the opportunity to have it. And I know a lot of that is spiritual for me. It's therapeutic. Like, music heals me personally. Some people read, some people exercise. I try to do all those, but nothing is like music and restoring your soul. And a lot of people sometimes maybe look at it as like oldies and remembering things. That's not what music is for me. Music is constantly evolving. When I hear people my age say, oh, the music today is no good like it was when I was a kid. And I'm like, the essence of music is love. And anybody that tries to tell me people love each other less today than they did 100 years ago, I'm sorry, you're just old.
That's great. The essence of music is love.
So I guess that's as good a place as I can leave it.
That's a great place to end. Thank you so much for your time.
Wish I may, I might just change. Wish I may, I might. Though it's gonna feel so strange, gonna change something tonight. It's gotta change.
As we wrap up today's conversation, I'm struck by a powerful parallel that kept surfacing throughout this interview. Sheriff Evangelidis spoke about music with the same depth, focus, and intensity that he brings to his work in law enforcement, both here in Worcester County and earlier in his career as a prosecutor in one of the highest crime areas of Miami. For him, music isn't just a hobby or an escape. It's a grounding force. It's what helps him process the weight of responsibility, the exposure to trauma, and the constant tension that comes with a life spent making difficult decisions. That mirrors what we see every day in Opportunities work. In spaces that are often defined by loss, isolation, and limited choices, music becomes a lifeline. It creates moments of balance, dignity, beauty, and self-expression. It brings light into places that can feel overwhelmingly dark, not by ignoring the realities people face, but by giving them a way to breathe, to reflect, to heal, to rehabilitate, and to imagine something beyond their current circumstances. What stood out most in this conversation is the shared understanding that rehabilitation is not just about rules, accountability, or programs. It's about humanity. Music reminds us of that. It humanizes people on all sides of the system. It offers a language for emotion when words fall short, and it creates connection where walls, both physical and emotional, are high. Hearing how music sustains Sheriff Evangelidis in this work helps reinforce why this matters so deeply. When leaders recognize the role of creative expression in maintaining balance, resilience, and hope, it opens the door to more compassionate and effective approaches to justice. And when music is treated not as a luxury, but as a tool for transformation, it has the power to change lives. Each episode of inTUNE will include a segment called The Pulse, where I respond to real questions from teachers, parents, educational leaders, or community partners about inclusion and music. And today's category is Justice Programs, how we can use music to build community inside correctional institutions. If you've ever thought, I'd love to teach or start a music program inside, but I have no idea where to begin, this is for you. Here are 3 practical tips to help you get started or deepen the work you're already doing. 1. Partner with existing institutions. Before you try to go in alone, find the people who are already doing the work. This might be local reentry or restorative justice organizations, public defenders or social workers, chaplaincy or education departments inside the facility. These individuals could help you navigate background checks and clearances, understand the rules and culture of a specific jail or prison, or identify what the actual needs are, both musically and emotionally. Instead of saying, here's my program, where can I put it? Start with, what's already happening here? Where are the gaps? How can music support what you're already doing? Remember, you're not just trying to get in the door, you're trying to become a part of a network of care that will still be there even when you're not. 2, design trauma-informed, flexible lessons. Inside, things are unpredictable. People can get transferred, released, put on lockdown. Attendance can be irregular. So as you're planning your lessons, you want to think simple, repeatable, modular. This might look like a routine short check-in at the start of every session, or a core activity that stands alone each time. For us, it's a writing prompt, but for you, it might look like a rhythm exercise or a listening circle at the onset of every lesson, or also a short reflection or grounding practice at the end. For a lot of our programs, we are in the habit of doing a group performance at the end of a class. So they might share something that they worked on throughout the class, even if it's not in its polished form. It being trauma-informed also means that you don't force people to share personal stories or trauma, that you offer choices in the moment to give people a sense of control, or you keep an eye on the emotional temperature in the room and slow down or take a break if needed. You may also want to build in grounding tools, a couple of deep breaths together at the start of a class, or a brief body scan, some stretching, or even just a quiet moment with instrumental music. One of our teaching instructors in our Songwriter Circle program likes to start with a moment where he plays and improvises on the guitar and lets the guys just kind of free write whatever comes out in the moment. The ultimate goal is to make your sessions safe, predictable, and respectful, even when everything around your participants is not. And finally, 3, center dignity, not charity. The most powerful shift you can make is to stop thinking of the people that you're working with as helping them and start thinking about them as collaborating artists, people with whom you are working with to create an end goal. People in the inside are musicians, writers, thinkers, culture keepers, and you need to treat them that way. Practically, this might mean that you ask them what kind of music they want to explore, you invite feedback about what worked that day, what didn't, and at the end of every semester, you might implement some kind of a survey that gets a snapshot of what was successful and what wasn't. Be careful with savior narratives like, I'm going to save people with music. That mindset can unintentionally take away agency, which is inherently toxic and contradictory to what you're trying to accomplish inside the facility. Instead, focus on mutual learning. You bring your skills and resources, they bring lived experience, creativity, and perspective, and together you make something that couldn't exist without both. This has been inTUNE, The Pulse, Justice Programs. Thanks for listening and for ways you're using music to build community on both sides of the wall. As I mentioned earlier, all of the music from today's episode was written and produced by Opportunity students. To learn more about each song featured in today's episode, check out our show notes. Sheriff Evangelidis, thank you for your leadership, partnership, and commitment to rehabilitation through dignity, education, and creativity. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If this conversation resonated, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. It really helps others find the show. You can also send me your questions or coaching topics at opportunitymusic.org/intune, and I might feature them in a future episode. That's OPPORTUNEITY music.org/intune. Until next time, stay inspired, stay connected, and keep making music that brings people together.